I've got a pair of 706 S2s in my small living room, and they're being driven by an integrated amplifier. So recently I thought, why not add a subwoofer to the setup? And one of the reasons for doing so is to learn how to do that. So I've never really looked into how subwoofers are added to existing systems, and today I'm going to talk about what I've learned. So if you're like me looking to add a subwoofer to your existing system, the first thing to do is to find one of the correct size. So 706 are basically they are quite large, but they're still considered bookshelf speakers, so you don't want to get a very large subwoofer. This is an 8-inch driver. The 10-inch unit is slightly too wide for where I need to use it anyway. Plus it's probably going to overwhelm the what do you call it, sorry, the 706, the pair of 706 S2s that I've got. So the largest subwoofers are probably more suited towards floor standing speakers. So I'm just going to rotate this around and I'll be right back. Okay, so these things weigh quite a bit, so I wasn't able to rotate it around with just one hand. So they're over 10 kilos, so pretty well built. This is the ASW608, which I'm guessing stands for active subwoofer. Now this is probably the cheapest subwoofer that Bowers and Wilkins does. I paid £345 for this, and it comes with a free subwoofer cable that's about 5 meters long, and that cable alone retails for about £160. So quite a good deal. Anyway, so if you're thinking of adding a subwoofer to your setup, the first thing you need to work out is what sort of output your amplifier, or if you're using an active speaker, what sort of output it has. Now good subwoofers like these ones have a variety of inputs, as you can probably see here, and I'm going to talk through them. So the first and most common way of connecting a subwoofer would be to use an LFE out. So if you have an AV receiver or an integrated amplifier that has a subwoofer out connector at the rear, that means the internal unit already has a low pass filter to strip out the high frequency sound signals, and whatever signal comes out of that RCA jack is already subwoofer sort of frequency range. So all you need to do is connect a cable from that output to the line in. Now in that case, you only need one cable, and it doesn't matter whether you connect it to the left or right side, because your amplifier would have already mixed the left and right channels into the single output. If you're going to do that, then you also need to switch this switch to out, this low pass filter to out, and that's because you don't want to be using a low pass filter that's built into this unit itself. So and then also what you then do is you'll be using this volume knob, the one on top, to adjust the volume of the subwoofer. Now this says line, so this only applies to signals coming in via either of these RCA jacks. In that case, you also want to switch to auto, and what that does is the subwoofer will automatically go to sleep if it doesn't detect an audio signal for 5 minutes. So it auto powers on, auto goes to sleep, and also the volume will be relative to the volume of your main speakers. So as the volume of the line signal goes up, then so will the output of the subwoofer. Now on systems like mine, for example, I haven't got an LFE out connection, so I have two options to hook this up to my system. The first and the least preferred option would be to use line in. So once again, you can see this right and left here. So what I'll have to do is use a pair of RCA cables, so left and right to standard line out on the integrated amplifier, and then I'll adjust the volume here as well because it says line. Now the one difference is I'll have to switch this filter to in because I'm sending out line level signal at full frequency range, and I'll need the low pass filter that's built into this unit to strip out the higher frequency signals. Now the one downside to doing so is the line level output of any amplifier will always be at maximum volume, which means that every time I adjust the volume control on the amplifier, I'll have to come to the subwoofer and adjust this knob manually. So that's a real annoyance. I guess it would be okay to leave this set to the usual sort of listening volume and leave it there, but that's not ideal because it means it's really going to be the same volume all the while. So another option, and this is probably the best way to hook up a subwoofer, is to use speaker level in instead. Now there are a few reasons for doing so. So speaker level in is also known as high level input. The reason being the input is already amplified to speaker level, so it has the power to drive your main speakers. And what you want to do is to hook up some speaker cables like this. So what I've got here is I've got a bi-wiring cable from Wireworld, and these are quite cheap as well. So these are meant for bi-wiring. So if you were to use like for example my 706 S2s, I've got 4 wires running to each channel, so 2 to the tweeters and 2 to the woofers. But in this case, instead of bi-wiring, what I'm doing is I'm using this to hook up all 4 speaker posts. So a pair of these will be to the right channel and a pair will be to the left, something like that. And then on this end, I'll do the same to the back of my integrated amplifier where the speaker posts are located. So basically, electrically, what you're doing is you're connecting this in parallel with your left and right speakers on your system, and this doesn't draw any power at all. So it's not as though by hooking this up, then your amplifier will have less power to drive your main speakers. The advantage of this approach is obviously the subwoofer's audio output will be controlled by the volume of your main speakers, because it's taking the signal from your main speakers. The other advantage is from an audiophile standpoint, every amplifier sounds different because it colors the signal output to your speakers in its own unique way. So an amplifier from Denon would sound different to one from Cambridge Audio, for example. And by hooking this up to the speaker outputs, the coloring from your amplifier will also translate into the subwoofer. So essentially the signal that goes in will have the same coloring as the signal that goes into your main speakers, and that will allow the system to harmonize a lot better. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So we have yeah, obviously if you're going to use high level or speaker level in, then you're going to use this volume knob instead. So the first one would have no effect whatsoever, and you're going to use the one in the middle to control the volume. So once you set it to the correct volume, then you just leave it where it is, and it will always be at that volume relative to the signal that goes to your main speakers. Now the other options here, I'm just going to run through them really quickly. So this is your low pass frequency. You want to set this to the, I think it's the -6 decibel point frequency cutoff of your main speakers. So if you have a pair of speakers from well-branded one like Bowers and Wilkins or proper ones, if you go in, have a look at your user manual, it'll tell you exactly what the cutoff point is at the low end and the high end. And for 706 S2, I can see that the cutoff point is 45 Hertz. So I'm going to set this right in between 40 and 50. And that tells the subwoofer to cut off all frequencies above 45 Hertz. So all the frequencies above 45 will be handled by my 706 S2 main speakers, and the subwoofer will only handle those below that frequency. So the other thing, we've already covered the low pass filter, so whether you want it to be on or bypassed. These other two switches are specific to this subwoofer, so have a look at the user manual. There are some suggestions on what to set these to depending on your room characteristics, your room size, the placement of the subwoofer, etc. So I won't be going through them in this video. This switch here is your phase, obviously 180 degrees out of phase or zero. The default is obviously 0, and if you find that the waves are cancelling each other out, then you've got a wiring problem in your system. You can switch this to 180 to correct that. But in all honesty, if you've got that issue, you should resolve the problem in your wiring, because it means that you've probably crossed the positive and negative wires somewhere. So you don't want to really rely on that. The 12 volt trigger, so what this does is if you switch the switch to standby, so this will normally turn the subwoofer off and the LED will illuminate red, and when it's in standby, the subwoofer will only come on when it receives 12 volts into this jack. So this is just a 3.5 millimeter jack, and whenever 12 volts is supplied to it, the subwoofer will come off standby and it will start producing sound. And as soon as that 12 volt signal is cut off, then it goes back into standby. So that only works if your main amplifier has the ability to output the 12 volt signal trigger. And lastly, this is just a standard C8 connector, C8 female connector, and that's just a fuse. That's it really. So on the 608 and 610 Bowers and Wilkins series, including the 610 XP, you have pretty much the same set of connections and controls. Yeah. Any questions, please leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.